The rain was coming down so hard, it felt like gravel hitting the roof of the cab, drowning out everything but the sound of my own ragged breathing and the blood rushing in my ears. I was pinned behind the front wheel of a rusted Ford F-150, mud soaking through the knees of my jeans, listening to the distinctive clack-clack of a pump-action shotgun being racked in the dark. 10 feet away, an old man who looked like he belonged in a nursing home was standing straight up in the downpour, holding nothing but a walking cane, staring down the barrel of that gun like he was bored. He didn't flinch. He didn't run. He just adjusted his grip on the cane and whispered something I couldn't hear over the storm. I thought I was there to save him. I thought I was the one who was supposed to handle the violence. I was wrong. I wasn't the shield tonight. I was the witness to something I thought only existed in history books. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? Drop your city and mile marker. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Missouri in late November is a mean kind of cold. It's not just the temperature dropping into the 30s, it's the damp. It's a wet, heavy grey that seeps into the steel of the rig, curls into the upholstery, and eventually finds its way right into your bones. I'd been fighting a crosswind on I-44 for 6 hours, wrestling the steering wheel of my Peterbilt to keep 40,000 pounds of steel pipe from drifting into the passing lane. My shoulders were tight. That deep, burning ache that lives between the shoulder blades of every long hauler who's pushed past his logbook limit in his head, even if the paper says he's legal. My eyes felt like they were full of sand, and the rhythm of the wipers, slap, 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 was starting to hypnotize me. I needed off the road, not tomorrow, not in an hour. Now. I bypassed the big chain truck stop at the exit. I didn't have the patience for the bright lights, the overpriced coffee, or the steering wheel holders arguing over fuel points at the counter. I wanted silence. I rolled another 3 miles down a state highway that was little more than patched asphalt and potholes, aiming for a gravel overflow lot I knew from years back. It was nothing more than a widened patch of dirt next to a closed-down diner, bordered by a dense thicket of oaks that were currently being thrashed by the wind. Perfect, quiet, dark. I crunched onto the gravel, the headlights sweeping across the muddy puddles, and killed the engine. The silence that followed was instant and heavy, save for the rhythmic drumming of the rain on the roof and the ticking of the cooling diesel engine beneath me. It's a sound every trucker knows, the beast going to sleep. I leaned back in the driver's seat, exhaling a long breath that fogged the windshield, and reached for the thermos on the passenger seat. It was lukewarm, but the caffeine was necessary if I was going to make the final leg to Tulsa in the morning. That's when I saw them. In the far corner of the lot, barely illuminated by the flickering mercury vapor light on the old diner pole, sat a pickup truck. It was a square-body Ford, maybe an 85 or 86, two-tone brown and tan. It was the kind of truck you don't see much anymore, kept alive by love and duct tape, rusted around the wheel wells but polished on the hood. But it wasn't parked right. It was angled weirdly toward the woods, and it was boxed in. A black sedan, low-slung and aggressive, was parked diagonally across the Ford's front bumper. It wasn't an accident. It was a blockade. The sedan looked like it had been through a demolition derby. The front bumper was hanging on by zip ties, and the paint was more primer than gloss. I sat forward, the lukewarm coffee forgotten in my hand. Instinct, honed by 2 decades on the asphalt and a few years in places much worse than Missouri, pricked at the hairs on the back of my neck. You learn to read the geometry of trouble before you even see the faces involved. This was bad geometry. I cracked my window just an inch. The wind howled through the gap, carrying voices. They were sharp, jagged, cutting through the heavy, wet air. I said, "Open the damn door, Pops! Get out here!" I squinted through the rain-streaked glass, wiping the condensation away with my sleeve. 3 men. They were young, edgy, moving with that jerky, predatory energy that usually comes from a bottle or a pill. They were wearing hoodies and denim, circling the old Ford like wolves testing a fence line. Standing by the driver's door of the pickup was an old man. Even from 50 yards away, through the rain and the dark, He looked frail. He was wearing a thin windbreaker that was soaked through, plastering to a frame that looked like it was made of wire hangers and parchment paper. He had his hands up, palms open, waist high. It was the universal sign for "I don't want trouble." It was the posture of a victim. Next to him, clutching the side mirror bracket like it was the only solid thing in the world, was a kid. A boy. Maybe 10 years old, skinny, wearing a ball cap and a hoodie that was too big for him. He was shaking. I could see the tremors from my cab. He was looking up at the old man, eyes wide, terrified. I watched. You don't jump out of the truck for every argument you see in a parking lot. You wait. You assess. You look for the line. The line is invisible, but you know it when it's crossed. It's the difference between a dispute over a parking spot and a victimization. "Look at my bumper," one of the men shouted. He was the biggest of the three, wearing a leather vest over a grey hoodie, his hair plastered to his skull by the rain. He kicked the front tire of the old Ford. Thud. "You backed into us. That's $500 damage, easy." I shifted my gaze to the sedan. There was no fresh damage. The thing was a rolling wreck. The damage he was pointing at was rusted over. This wasn't an insurance claim. This was a shakedown. A classic bump and rob setup, targeting the weakest prey they could find on a dark night miles from a police station. "I didn't move the vehicle," the old man said. His voice drifted to me, carried by a gust of wind. It was surprisingly steady, low, no panic in it. Just a flat statement of fact. "And I don't carry cash, son. We're just trying to sleep." "Don't call me son." The leader stepped in close, invading the old man's personal space, shoving his face inches from the grandfather's nose. "You got a wallet. You got a watch. Hand it over, or we take it out of the truck. And maybe we take the kid for a ride, teach him some manners." The line, there it was, bright red and crossed. I set the coffee down in the cup holder with a heavy click. I looked at the mag light I keep clipped under the seat, a heavy 4-cell metal baton that can break a collarbone if you swing it right. I hesitated, then left it. Carrying a weapon escalates things before you even open your mouth. If I walked up with a club, I was starting a war. If I walked up with just my size, maybe I could end it without blood. I grabbed my heavy canvas coat, jammed my hat down tight over my eyes, and opened the door. The wind tried to rip it out of my hand, but I held it firm, stepping down onto the fuel tank step and then into the muddy gravel. The cold hit me like a physical blow, smelling of ozone, wet asphalt, and decaying leaves. I closed the door with a solid thud. It's a heavy sound, the sound of industrial machinery latching. It carries. The three heads at the Ford snapped toward me. I didn't run. I walked. I walked with the slow, rolling gait of a man who has walked 1,000,000 miles around trucks, checking tires and chains. I kept my hands out of my pockets, swinging loose at my sides. I wanted them to see the size of me. I'm 6'4" and built like a chest freezer that's been left out in the rain. I wanted them to realize that the equation of the parking lot had just changed. "Everything all right over here?" I called out. My voice is deep, roughened by years of diesel fumes and black coffee. It rumbled over the rain, not shouting, just projecting. The leader turned fully. He sized me up, eyes narrowing. He saw a trucker. He probably thought I was tired, fat, and slow. He saw a target that was bigger but maybe slower. He didn't see the scars on my knuckles or the way I was tracking his center of gravity. "Keep walking, fat boy," the leader sneered, spitting into the mud. "Private matter." "It stopped being private when you blocked the exit and started screaming at a kid," I said, not slowing down until I was 15 feet away. I stopped, forming a triangle with them and the old man. I ignored the leader for a second and looked at the grandfather. "You okay, sir?" The old man looked at me. His face was lined with deep crevices, water dripping from a nose that had been broken at least once in the distant past. His eyes were grey, calm, and unsettlingly flat. They weren't the eyes of a scared old man. They were the eyes of someone waiting for a bus. "We are fine, driver," the old man said. "Just a misunderstanding." "He hit my car," the leader yelled, stepping toward me, puffing his chest out. He was trying to reclaim dominance, trying to make himself look big in front of his pack. He owes me. I got a dash cam running in the rig, I lied smoothly. I gestured back toward my truck with a thumb. It's been recording for 10 minutes. Night vision. Audio, the works. I didn't see a collision, but I did see 3 men cornering a senior citizen and a child. I don't give a damn about your camera. The second guy piped up. He was skinny, twitchy, wearing a red beanie pulled low. He moved to my left, flanking. Pack tactics. Hyenas. You need to get back in your truck and leave. Now, or we break that camera and your face. Or what? I asked, keeping my head on a swivel, watching the third guy, a heavy-set, silent type in a camo jacket who was hanging back near the sedan's trunk. Or you bleed, Red Beanie said. He reached into his pocket. The air in the lot changed. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The threat was out in the open now. It wasn't posturing anymore. It was violence waiting for a spark. "Grandpa," the kid whimpered, pressing himself against the door of the Ford. "I'm scared." The old man didn't look at the kid. He kept his eyes on the leader, but his voice softened instantly. "Timmy, get in the truck," he said. "Lock the door. Put your head down on the seat." "But move, soldier," the old man ordered. The word soldier came out sharp like the crack of a whip. It wasn't a pet name, it was a command. The boy scrambled up the running board, threw himself into the cab and slammed the door. The lock clicked. "Cute," the leader said, turning his attention back to me. "You're a hero, huh? You want to be a hero tonight?" He shoved me, 2 hands to the chest, hard. It was meant to knock me off balance, to humiliate me, to make me stumble back into the mud so they could swarm. But I've spent my life bracing against shifting loads, tightening chains on flatbeds in gale force winds. I have a center of gravity that doesn't move just because some punk wants it to. I didn't move an inch. I didn't rock back. I just looked down at his hands on my jacket. "Don't do that again," I said quietly. "I'll do whatever I want." He swung. A wild, sloppy, wide right hook aimed at my jaw. I didn't block it. I stepped inside it. I dropped my level 6 inches and drove my shoulder into his chest, checking him like a hockey player. The breath left him in a wet whoosh, and he stumbled back, boots slipping in the mud. He landed hard on his backside in a puddle, splashing dirty water up his legs. "Stay down," I growled. "Get him!" the leader screamed from the mud, his voice cracking with humiliation. Red Beanie lunged. I saw the glint of metal in his hand. A knife, a box cutter maybe. Small, nasty, jagged. The kind of blade that doesn't kill you quick, it just shreds you until you panic and bleed out. "Knife!" I yelled, stepping back to create distance. I was ready to fight. I was ready to take the cut to give a hit, but I wasn't ready for what happened next. "Identify target," the old man said. I froze. The voice had changed. It wasn't the grandpa anymore. It wasn't the victim. The frailty was gone. He stood up straight, his spine aligning like a steel rod. He shifted his weight, not away from the threat, but toward it. "What?" I said, watching Red Beanie circle me. "3 bogeys," the old man muttered to himself. "1 grounded, 1 armed blade, 1 rear guard." "Old man, shut up," Red Beanie hissed, slashing the air in front of me. "I'm gonna cut this trucker, then I'm coming for you." "Jack," the old man said. He knew my name. He must have read it off the door of my truck when I pulled in. "Shift left, draw his focus." "He's got a knife, Pops," I shouted, keeping my eyes on the blade. "I know," the old man said. He reached down to his belt. I thought he was reaching for a phone, or maybe a wallet to throw at them. He unclipped the walking cane he'd been leaning on. It was a black aluminum cane with a hook handle. He flicked his wrist. Click. It wasn't just a cane. He twisted the handle, and I heard the distinct sound of a locking mechanism disengaging. He didn't pull a sword out of it. This wasn't a movie, but he extended it, locking it into a longer, rigid staff. He held it not like a crutch, but like a weapon. Balanced. Light. "You want to play, old man?" Red Beanie laughed, turning his attention away from me for a split second. "I'll carve you up like a—" He never finished the sentence. The old man moved. And when I say he moved, I don't mean he walked fast. I mean he exploded. It was a burst of kinetic energy that defied his age, defied the physics of the situation. He covered the 6 feet between them in a single stride. He didn't swing the cane like a club. He used the hook. He caught Red Beanie's wrist, the knife hand, with the crook of the cane, and yanked it sideways. At the same time, he drove a straight kick into the guy's kneecap. Crack! Red Beanie screamed, the knife flying into the dark. He crumpled to the ground, clutching his leg. "Target 2, neutralized," the old man said, breathing calmly. He spun around, facing the leader who was scrambling up from the mud. I stood there, stunned. The rain was hammering down, but I barely felt it. I was looking at a man who had just dismantled an armed attacker in under 2 seconds, without breaking a sweat. "Behind you!" I yelled. The third guy, the heavy one in the camo jacket, was moving. He wasn't running away. He was running to the trunk of the sedan. He popped it open. "He's going for a piece," I shouted, sprinting toward the old man. "Cover!" the old man barked. He grabbed my jacket and yanked me down. We dove behind the front wheel of the Ford just as the heavy guy spun around. Boom! The sound of the shotgun was deafening, a physical slap against the eardrums that rang in my head. Buckshot tore into the grill of the Ford, shattering the plastic and sending shards flying. The headlight exploded in a shower of sparks and glass. "I'm pinned!" I shouted, pressing my back against the muddy tire. "He's got a shotgun! 12 gauge!" The old man was kneeling beside me. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't hyperventilating. He was checking the sight lines under the chassis of the truck, watching the feet of the gunman. "Pump action," the old man said. His voice was clinical, detached. "He's angry. He's firing from the hip. Low accuracy. But at this range, the spread will catch us if we move into the open. We need to run," I said, looking toward the woods. "Make a break for the trees." "Negative," the old man said, his grey eyes locking onto mine. "The boy is in the cab. We don't leave the principal. We hold the line." Boom! Another shot. This one took out the side mirror above us. Glass rained down on my shoulders. I flinched, covering my head. "He's advancing," the old man said. "He's closing the distance. We have maybe 10 seconds before he has an angle on the cab." He looked at me. He looked at his cane. Then he looked at the gunman's legs visible beneath the truck. "Jack," he said, "I need a distraction." "You need a what?" "I'm going to flank him," he said. "I need you to draw his fire, just for 1 second." "You're insane," I hissed. "He'll cut you in half." "He's focused on the truck," the old man said. "He thinks we're cowering. He thinks we're prey. I need him to look left so I can go right." He gripped the cane tight, his knuckles white but steady. "On my mark," he whispered. 3, 2, 1. "Mark!" The word left the old man's lips like a starter pistol crack. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I trusted the command because in that split second, it was the only thing making sense in a world gone mad. I grabbed a fistful of wet, jagged gravel from the mud and hurled it high and hard over the hood of the sedan, screaming at the top of my lungs, "Hey, over here, you coward!" It was a desperate, guttural roar, the kind that scrapes the lining of your throat raw. I scrambled to my left, away from the cover of the tire, purposely stomping my boots in the slush to make as much noise as possible. It was the stupidest thing I'd ever done. I was making myself a silhouette against the faint light of the diner sign, a 400-pound target in a Carhartt jacket. The gunman panicked. The sudden noise, the movement, the shouting, it broke his tunnel vision. He swung the barrel of the shotgun wildly toward my voice, away from the truck cab where the boy was hiding. Boom! The third shot tore through the air. I felt the heat of it. The buckshot chewed up the ground 6 feet to my left, sending a spray of mud and rock peppering against my legs. He had missed, but only because he was firing in blind terror. He racked the slide again. Clack, clack. That was the sound of death reloading. But it was also the sound of opportunity, because while the gunman was staring at me, He wasn't looking at Arthur. The old man moved. I have seen fights in bars, in truck stops, and overseas. I know what violence looks like. Usually it's messy. It's flailing arms and wasted energy. This was not that. This was geometry applied to human anatomy. Arthur cleared the distance between the wheel well and the gunman in 3 strides. He didn't look like a grandfather anymore. He looked like a predator. He stayed low, his center of gravity sunk deep, the cane held in a 2-handed grip like a bayonet. The gunman saw him at the last second. He tried to turn the shotgun back, eyes going wide with shock. No! Arthur didn't slow down. He stepped inside the arc of the barrel, parrying the weapon aside with his left forearm, while simultaneously driving the brass-capped tip of the cane into the gunman's solar plexus. It was a precise, devastating strike. I heard the air leave the man's lungs, a wet, choking gasp. The gunman doubled over, the shotgun slipping from his numb fingers. Arthur wasn't done. He didn't stop to admire his work. He flowed around the collapsing man, hooking the crook of the cane behind the guy's right knee and shoving his shoulder. The gunman went down hard, face first into the gravel, incapacitated by pain and lack of oxygen. Arthur stood over him for a heartbeat, the cane raised ready to strike again if the threat persisted, but the man was done. He was curled in a fetal ball in the mud, wheezing. The old man kicked the shotgun. It skittered across the wet stones, sliding under the sedan, out of reach. Silence slammed back into the parking lot, heavy and ringing. The only sounds were the rain, the whimpering of the guy with the broken leg near the truck, and my own heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. I stood up slowly, my hands shaking. I wiped mud from my face, tasting iron and grit. I walked over to where Arthur was standing. He was leaning on the cane again. The posture had shifted back. His shoulders were slumped, his breathing slightly labored. He looked small. He looked tired. He looked like a man who just wanted to go to sleep. "Secure the weapon, Jack," he said quietly, nodding toward the sedan. I crouched down and fished the shotgun out from under the car. I checked the chamber, loaded, and racked the shell out, pocketing it. I placed the gun in the bed of his pickup, high and out of reach. "You okay?" I asked, looking at him. Arthur was rubbing his right elbow, wincing. "Arthritis," he muttered, "doesn't like the damp, and it certainly doesn't like close-quarters combat." "Arthur," I said, staring at the 3 men scattered on the ground, one unconscious, one sobbing over a broken knee, one gasping for air. "Who are you, really?" He looked up at me, water dripping from the brim of his hat. His eyes were softer now, the steel receding back behind the grey. "I told you," he said, "I'm a grandfather. That's the only job title that matters tonight." "Did grandpas don't take down 3 armed men in under a minute?" I said. "Necessity," he said simply. "Fear is a powerful motivator, Jack. Fear for someone you love makes you capable of things you thought you'd forgotten." He turned and tapped gently on the window of the truck. "Timmy, it's safe now. Stay inside, but it's safe." The boy's face appeared at the glass, pale and tear-streaked. He gave a small, trembling nod. "We need to go," I said, looking at the leader, the one I'd shoved earlier. He was sitting in the puddle, holding his arm, staring at Arthur with a mix of hatred and terror. "We need to get wheels turning, before they wake up enough to make calls." The leader spat blood into the water. He fumbled for his phone with his good hand, his eyes wild. "You're dead," he rasped, his voice cracking. "You hear me? You're both dead men." "Put the phone down," I warned, stepping toward him. "I'm calling Ray," he screamed, tapping the screen frantically. "My brother is the sheriff deputy on patrol. He's gonna kill you. He's gonna bury you both under the jail." My stomach dropped. That was the variable we hadn't accounted for. The good old boy network. In these parts, if you hurt a local, even a criminal local, and the law is related to them, justice doesn't come from a judge. It comes from a nightstick in a dark cell. "Arthur," I said, urgency spiking in my voice. "If his brother is the badge, we cannot be here when he arrives." We are two drifters in a muddy lot with 3 injured locals. They will spin this. They will say we jumped them." Arthur looked at the leader, then back at me. "If we run, we look guilty. If we run, they put an APB out on your truck and mine. They stop us on the highway away from cameras, away from witnesses. That is a tactical error." "So we just wait?" I asked, incredulous. "Wait for a corrupt cop to show up and finish what these punks started?" "We stand fast," Arthur said. "We hold the high ground. Truth is the high ground." "Truth doesn't stop a bullet from a dirty cop," I muttered. Arthur reached into his rain-soaked windbreaker. He pulled out the leather wallet I'd seen earlier. He held it tightly in his hand, his thumb tracing the worn edge. "I haven't shown this to anyone in 40 years, he whispered, almost to himself. "I put it in a box in 1972 and swore I was done with that life. I wanted peace. I wanted to be Arthur the mechanic, Arthur the dad, Arthur the grandpa." "What is it?" I asked. "It's the only shield big enough to stop what's coming," he said. Screeching tires cut him off. We turned. On the state highway, blue lights were flashing. Not one car. 3 of them. They were tearing around the bend, sirens wailing, cutting through the night like jagged knives. "Here they come," I said, stepping in front of Arthur. "Stay behind me. I'm big. I'm the threat. Let me take the heat." Arthur shook his head and stepped beside me. "No, Jack. You've done enough. Stand down." The cruisers roared into the lot, spraying gravel and mud as they fishtailed to a halt, boxing us in against the woods. The doors flew open before the wheels even stopped rolling. Deputies poured out. They weren't coming to investigate. They were coming to dominate. "Hands! Let me see hands now!" Spotlights from the cruisers blinded us, turning the rain into a wall of white glare. I squinted, raising my hands high above my head. "We are unarmed," I shouted. "We are cooperating. That's them," the leader on the ground screamed, struggling to stand up. Ray, it's them. That freak with the stick broke Billy's leg. They tried to kill us." A massive deputy stepped out of the lead cruiser. He wasn't wearing a hat. He was bald, thick-necked, wearing a yellow rain slicker over his uniform. He had a Glock in his hand, and it was pointed directly at my chest. "Get on the ground," the deputy Ray roared. "Face down in the mud. Do it now or I will drop you." "Officer, listen to me," I started. "I said get down." Ray advanced, closing the distance. He was fueled by adrenaline and his brother's lies. "You hurt my family? You come into my town and hurt my family?" He was 10 feet away. His finger was on the trigger guard. I could see the tension in his forearm. He was looking for a reason. Any reason. "Drop the stick, old man," Ray yelled, swinging the gun toward Arthur. Arthur didn't drop the cane. He held it in his right hand, leaning on it casually. In his left hand, he held the wallet up, chest high. "Deputy," Arthur said. His voice wasn't a shout. It was a projection. A deep, resonant baritone that cut through the wind and the sirens. It was the voice of a man who used to give orders to men who killed people for a living. "Identify yourself." Ray blinked, thrown off by the tone. "I'm Deputy Ray Miller, and you are about 2 seconds away from a hole in your chest. Get on your knees." "Miller," Arthur said, testing the name. "You are making a mistake, son. A career-ending mistake." "Shut your mouth." Miller stepped closer, gun shaking slightly now. "On your knees." "I am Master Sergeant Arthur J. Pendleton, United States Army, retired," Arthur announced. He didn't rush the words. He let them hang in the air. "And you will lower that weapon immediately." "I don't care who you are," Miller screamed. He was losing control. "You attacked my brother." "I defended a child," Arthur said, "and I am ordering you to stand down." "Ordering me?" Miller laughed, a manic, dangerous sound. "You don't give orders here, Grandpa. I am the law." "Not tonight," Arthur said. He flipped the wallet open. The movement was crisp. Snap. He held it out into the beam of the spotlight. At first, Miller didn't look. He was too focused on the rage. But the deputy beside him, a younger guy with a flashlight, swung his beam onto the object in Arthur's hand. The light caught the blue velvet, it caught the gold, it caught the 5 stars surrounded by the green wreath, the Medal of Honor. The effect was instantaneous. It rippled through the deputies like a shockwave. The young deputy with the flashlight gasped. "Ray!" "What?" Miller snapped, eyes still on Arthur's face. "Ray, look at the wallet," the young deputy whispered. "Look at it." Miller glanced down. He saw the ribbon. Time seemed to stop. The rain kept falling, but nobody moved. Every law enforcement officer, every first responder, every person who has ever worn a uniform knows what that medal means. It is the apex. It is the symbol of sacrifice so profound that it transcends rank. You don't salute the man, you salute the medal, and you never ever point a gun at it. Miller's face went pale. The rage drained out of him, replaced by a sudden, sickening realization of what he had almost done. "Is that—" Miller's voice was a croak. "Check the serial number if you doubt it," Arthur said, his voice hard as granite. "Awarded by President Nixon, 1971, for actions in the Shau Valley. I held a hill for 3 days against a battalion so my men could evacuate. I have walked through fire, deputy. Do not think for 1 second that you or your pistol intimidate me." Miller lowered the gun. He didn't holster it yet, but the barrel pointed at the mud. "Sergeant," Miller stammered. "Your brother," Arthur continued, nodding toward the sobbing man on the ground, "attempted to rob me. He threatened my 10-year-old grandson. He assaulted this driver who came to my aid, and then he instructed an accomplice to open fire with a shotgun." Arthur pointed the cane at the sedan. "The weapon is in the bed of my truck. The dashcam footage from this gentleman's rig will corroborate everything I just said." Miller looked at his brother. Earl was looking up, confused. "Ray, shoot him! What are you doing?" Miller looked back at Arthur. He looked at the medal, gleaming in the rain. He looked at me, standing there like a statue. Then slowly, Deputy Ray Miller holstered his weapon. He took a step back. He stood up straight. "Deputies," Miller said, his voice flat. "Secure the scene." "Yeah, cuff these two," Earl shouted. "No," Miller said, turning to look at his brother with disgusted eyes. "Cuff them. Cuff Earl. Cuff Billy. And call an ambulance for the guy by the car." "Ray," Earl screamed, "are you crazy?" "You lied to me, Earl," Miller said quietly. "You told me you got jumped. You didn't tell me you pulled a shotgun on a Medal of Honor recipient. You're on your own." The young deputy moved in, pulling handcuffs from his belt. "Turn around, Earl. Hands behind your back." Arthur didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just closed the wallet and slipped it back into his pocket. He leaned heavily on the cane, the adrenaline finally leaving his system, leaving just the ache of the years behind. I walked over to him. "You okay, Sarge?" Arthur let out a long, slow breath. "I hate that thing," he whispered. "The medal. I hate what I had to do to get it, and I hate that I had to use it like a shield tonight." "It saved our lives," I said. "It saved Timmy." "Maybe," Arthur said. "Or maybe it just reminded them that there are some lines you don't cross." The rest of the night was a blur of statements and flashing lights. The state police arrived to take over. Miller had called them himself, likely trying to salvage his own career by doing the right thing too late. They took my video card. They took photos of the shotgun. They took the 3 punks away in the back of a van. By 3 a.m. the lot was empty again. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle. The wind had died down. I stood by the hood of my Peterbilt, holding 2 fresh cups of coffee I'd just brewed. I walked over to the Ford. Arthur was sitting on the tailgate, watching the boys sleep in the cab. He looked older now than he had all night. "Hot coffee," I said, holding out the cup. He took it with a nod. His hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear, from the crash. "Thank you, Jack," he said, "for stopping. Most people, they just keep driving. They see trouble and they hit the gas. I couldn't leave a kid," I said, "and I couldn't leave a veteran." He took a sip of the coffee, staring out at the dark tree line. "I was taking him to the base," he said softly. "To the museum. He found the medal in the attic. He thinks it's cool. He thinks it makes me a superhero. He's right, I said. No, Arthur shook his head. Heroes are the ones who didn't come back down that hill, Jack. I'm just the one who survived to carry the memory. I didn't want him to know about the violence. I wanted him to think I was just Grandpa. He knows you protected him, I said. He knows you stood between him and the wolves. That's not about war, Arthur. That's about love. That's the part he's going to remember. Arthur looked at me. A faint smile touched his lips. You're a philosopher, Redline. I'm a trucker, I said. We got a lot of time to think. Where you headed? He asked. Tulsa, I said. Then west. We're going to San Diego, he said. Seeing the ocean. I think I'll tell him the story now. The real story. Not the movie version, but the truth. He's ready, I said. He saw you tonight. Arthur stood up. He poured the rest of the coffee into the mud, a libation for absent friends, maybe. He shook my hand. His grip was iron, even with the arthritis. Stay safe on the big road, Jack. You too, Sarge. I watched him climb into the Ford. He started the engine. It caught on the second try, rumbling with that distinctive old truck sound. He pulled out slowly, his blinker ticking, and turned onto the highway. I stood there until his taillights were just twin red stars fading into the gloom. I climbed back into my cab. The air smelled of wet dog and diesel. I sat there for a moment, listening to the engine idle. I thought about the medal in that cracked leather wallet. I thought about the weight of it. The things we carry in the dark so the people we love can walk in the light. I put the truck in gear. I released the brakes. The air hissed, a long sigh of relief. I pulled out onto the highway, chasing the dawn. The rain was stopping. The road ahead was clear. Thank you for watching. And if stories like this one about courage, sacrifice, and second chances speak to you, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us share more incredible true stories that honor the forgotten heroes among us.